Welcome. Sound
Thank you. Hello, good morning. Yeah, thank you. I have a good news and a bad news for you. The bad news is that speaking about humor is not very funny. So if you thought you would laugh a lot now, I think it's not very good place. But the good news is that my English is really very bad, and I think speaking about humor without humor could be very funny for you when you hear how I speak about it. I don't know if it could be a long time funny, but I try to speak as I can. You know, it's possible to stay 30 years in Geneva without speaking English. It's what I did. I never speak English, so I tried today. It's a little bit difficult for me, but I'll try. So, I do press cartoons, and press cartoons exist since the middle of the 18th century, and it has born when the newspaper have born in England, and it was possible to do newspapers and to do press cartoons in the middle of the 18th century, just because you had something very new for this time. It was the freedom of speech, and just because of it, there was a space, an area to speak about news and to laugh about news. And very early, the role of the press cartoon was to make laugh. The news weren't very funny, but the press cartoon made laugh. Why did the press cartoons make laugh? I think there is a special relationship between humor and between the image. I think the image is a very good vehicle to make fun, because when you see an image, you see many things together, and you don't understand, you are totally surprised. And suddenly, you understand the meaning of all what is on the image, and the understanding explodes on you, and the effect, I think, is stronger than by words. And for this reason, I think press cartoon was really the appropriate vehicle to make fun and to rest of the other news, which are not always very funny. But now we have to know what is humor, and there are many definitions of humor and many functions. And for me, for example, I try every day to use humor as a vehicle to say what I mean about the news. It's something which permits me to reach the reality. So every day, for example, I read the newspapers, I choose a subject, and I ask me, what do I have to say about this subject? And the goal for me, I am a journalist, I have my press card, and I try every day to tell something about the reality, about news. And for me, the gag is my favorite vehicle. It's my nature. I think I'm better with humor than with poetry, and I try with humor. But the image is also a very good vehicle for the emotion, and you can be very poetic, and you can be very impressive. You are more impressive with design, with image, than with words, and the effect is always stronger. And I think when every day, not every day, but when I can say something clever with humor, I did the job. Because of it, I think people will remember better than with words what was my message, and they will keep this message longer because maybe of the humor. So I think really humor, graphic humor has a special role. But there are other functions of humor. There are other way of making humor, and for example, you have the regressive humor. You know, we are in a very serious world, and we have to restrain ourselves continuously and constantly, and it costs us something to be always serious. And for example, we have always the temptation to be regressive as a kid, who you say a kid of 4 years who sees me and tells me, "Hey, Mr. Poop, bonjour, Monsieur Caca," and he's happy to say this because he knows it's forbidden, but he can tell it so, and it's agreeable for him. And we have always this temptation to regress. But of course, the society doesn't allow us to be like the child, and we have to find tricks to be regressive. And by the humor, with the humor, we can, for example, speak about poop, about regressive things without being punished for this. It's a social way to be regressive humor. And for example, you can also be transgressive. In the normal life, you can go to anybody and tell him, "Hi, hello, son of a bitch." The reaction will, you will be kicked, or I don't know. But if you have something against somebody, you can always, with humor, say maybe the same thing as a son of a bitch, but another way, which permits to the other to laugh a little bit with you, and you can tell him exactly the same thing that you can't say without humor. You can tell it with humor. And I spoke now of these two roles of humor, regressive humor and transgressive humor, and you see that these two roles are exactly the two roles that you could see in Charlie Hebdo. The undertitle of Charlie Hebdo was a long time the mean and the stupid and bad newspaper, and it's really a good function in a world, in such a serious world. I think it has really a role. It's not exactly what I want to do with humor, but it's a good role of the humor. It's something strange. I could say that you see this humor, bad, mean, and stupid, in France. And why in France? I think you can't see this humor in other countries, not on such a way. I think maybe my theory is that France is such a rationalistic country. It's the country of Descartes. And they try always to be so intellectual that they can't stay always so intellectual, and they have to regress and to transgress, and they need, I think, bad humor, mean humor. They need it more than other cultures. And you have still another function of humor, or maybe it's the same. Maybe you know that Freud told very, very interesting things about humor. I recommend it to you if you want to read his book about humor. It's the most important thing that I ever read about humor. And he showed that humor functions like a dream. For example, if you had no brownie during the day, you will sleep and you will dream of brownies. And you have no brownies, but when you wake up, you have almost the impressions you had brownies to eat. And it's exactly the same way by the humor. I don't know if you know this famous gag of a prisoner who is condemned to death. He's in the death row, and he's supposed to be executed on a Thursday, or I don't know exactly. And on the Monday, a guard comes to him and tells him, "Sorry, it's the day now. It's earlier than you thought." And the man tells him, "Man, the week begins well, really well." And you know, I like this humor because the man knows he'll die. He can't do anything against the death, but he can be stronger than his destiny, and doing humor against this death, he's stronger than it, and he can overcome. And he wins not in the reality, but he wins in the dream, in the fantasy, in the imagination. And for example, I had a problem with a certain man whose name is George W. Bush. And it was terrible. This man, he had the power. He said, you know, there are, how do you say, massive destruction weapons? Yeah? Massive destruction weapons. And we thought, no, Iraq has no destruction weapons. And you could try to argument, but it was impossible. He told, no, it's so, and I don't change my mind. So what can you do against this stupidity, against the power? You can just laugh on him and tell he's stupid. And this role is also very, very interesting and very important. And for example, I had this problem with Bush, but there are many countries where you have no liberty, where the power is very strong, and it's impossible to change the power. In these countries, the role of the cartoonist, the caricaturist, the humorist is very, very important. For example, with the Berlin Wall, there was a famous Polish humor, Czechish humor, and it was really vital to laugh about the power, and it was really a way to survive when the society is so shut, and it's very, very important, I think. So now, with whom can you make jokes? At first, you can joke with yourself. It's a good function. And you know, in the history of the humor, the techniques of humor haven't changed. You can read jokes in the Greek time. They did exactly the same jokes as we do now. The technique has absolutely not changed. We can just see a changement that brought England in the 18th century too. And it's the humor. You know, it's at the beginning it's a French word, humeur, but it's something very. It's another thing. And you had this humor, and humor is something new, not as a technique, but as a philosophy. And it's something which is contemporary to a certain death of God. You know, before, when God did exist for everybody, you had a goal. You knew why you were on the earth. But suddenly people say, no, God doesn't exist. So your life begins to be absurd. You ask yourself, why do I exist? And humor, a definition of humor is this one. Humor is the perception of your contingency, the contingency of your existence in the world. You are not necessary. So what can you do? You just make humor. Okay, I serve nothing. I have no role in this life, in this time, in this area. So laugh on it, and it's very interesting. You make jokes with yourself, and exactly what I did with the dreams, for example. You are happy when you make jokes in an absurd world. So you can also laugh with another person. You can laugh with two persons, and you can laugh with another person on a third person. And here I would like to define two kinds of humor. You can make integrative, inclusive humor or exclusive humor. And for example, when you are with a friend, with a person who is supposed to be your friend, you can go very, very, very far making jokes. You can make racist jokes with a good friend who is black, because you know he's your friend, he knows you're your friend, and he knows that there is always an empathy between you, and it's a sign of friendship, maybe, to make racistic jokes with a black. It can be. And for example, it's almost impossible for a Jew to make anti-Semitic jokes, because the other Jew who hears the joke doesn't think you are anti-Semitic. You are a Jew, you can be anti-Semitic. So it's always very easy to make, and what I would say, what is an anti-Semitic joke with a Jew. But so if there is friendship with somebody, I told you can go very, very far. You can go to the limits of what is allowed. And this is a very, very, very beautiful rule of the humor. It's to verify the limits of the freedom of speech. And it's maybe the most important social role of the humor, I think. And it's what I try to do, not every day, because I don't try every day to be provocative, but I go, for example, you know, I do this job, I have done this job during now 15 years. And at the beginning, I made jokes and I had reactions. People told me, but how can you tell it? But I made these people, I made laugh them. And so when you make laugh certain person 2 or 3 times, you become and they allow from their friend what they would not allow from somebody else. So they had laughed one or two times, and maybe sometimes they go to my drawings already. They laugh before they have seen my drawing, and because of this, they can support things that they wouldn't have support from somebody else. And I can go always further and further and further. And people, when people don't know if they have to laugh or to be irritated, I have won. Because they haven't kicked me, so I have won an area of freedom. And it's really the most important role, I think, of the humorist is to enlarge, to extend this area of freedom of speech. And if you make this inclusive humor, if you speak to people who haven't the same thinking as you have won. If you create a relationship between people who have not the same meaning. But you can't always speak with people who have the same opinion. I have it. So, for example, I know that I can't speak with an Islamist. I can't convince him. So, in this case, I will be exclusive. I show him, okay, you have your opinion, I have mine, I'm not on your side, and I show you, you have to support my opinion. But of course, with the laughter, you do it on a cool way, on a non-violent way. And I think to be violent on a cool way allows you to support to this violence, and it's you let a steam of the pot if you make humor with your violence. And humor is really a way to get out of your violence. I think it's a good way. So you see, I say humor is a weapon. But for me, there is a good way to use this weapon. And I think the best way to use it, and for me is the way I use it, it has always to be the answer of the weak one against the strong one. If you are the strong one, you don't have to make humor. You have the power. But if you are the weak one, it's really a good weapon to let this steam get out of the pot. And you remember what I said about Bush, and for example, it's the perfect example for me. I am the weak one. I can't do anything against him, but it's okay for me. I do it in the imagination. Now we have a problem. The problem is to know who is the strong one and who is the weak one. So, for example, sometimes I make jokes on Israel. And what happens? People write me, how can you do humor on Jews? And it's a problem. The Israeli is the strong one in the conflict with the Palestinian, but the Jew is a sacred person in Occident, in the West, because of all what we did with them in the 20th century. And we have exactly the same problem with Islam. can do jokes on Islam because Islam is something strong. They are almost 2 billion people. But the Muslims were oppressed, were conquered, were defeated by the Occident. And they feel humiliated. And it's difficult for them to support humor from somebody who they think who have the power, who is the strong one. And it's still strong, I think, with, for example, the Muslim of the suburbs of Paris, who is twice the weak one because he has problem with his social condition and as a Muslim, as a defeated culture. And you have always to know the relationship you have with the people with whom you make humor. So, we have seen that you can't do gag with anybody. It's very important to know about what, with whom you make humor. But another very interesting question is to know about what you can laugh. And you know, it's very interesting because the notion of sacred is something that has very, very changed this last 100 years. For example, for 100 years, it was impossible to speak about the king, for example. You were beheaded if you made jokes about the king. It was impossible to make laughters about God and about the religion. And it's very interesting because it has totally changed. These last 30 years, really, now it was impossible to laugh on the weak one. It's what somebody called the politically correct. It's it. Now it's impossible to make laughters on deaf people, ill people, disabled people, and we have a new sacred person, which is, for example, the child. Now it's impossible to make jokes about children, about pedophilia. Totally impossible. It's something very new. It's very interesting because when I was a student, for example, I saw my my professor who made love with girls of my class, and it was allowed. Children weren't protected. But now, for example, it was impossible to speak about sex, and now we can speak about sex. Always we can speak about gay people, about dildo, about sodomy. I don't know, but there are no limit about sex, and people have said, okay, we have to put new limits with sex. And what are the limits with sex? The new limits is the child. And so you create a new sacred, new limits with the sacred. And it's very interesting to see how the limits are moving with the people, with the time, and with the geographic areas. And we have a third. So you see that the most difficult is to speak from the weak with a weak person. I think it's the most sacred moment. And a third thing which is very important is the moment when you can make jokes. And for example, I think, and I say, you can't do jokes, you can't be on the second degree, we can tell it so? We can be in a second degree when people are in the first degree, also with a friend. When somebody is dead and all the people are mourning, you can't tell, he was so stupid, this man. No. It would mean, okay, you are all sad, you are in the sadness, in the sorrow, I'm not member of your band, of your gang, of your family, of your church. So it's really moments some moments are sacred. And you see, for example, the example of Dieudonné. 2 days after the attacks of Charlie Hebdo, he told, "I am Charlie Koulibaly." So, it was blasphemy. It was blasphemy because we know all that he did racist humor before. But 2 days after the attack, all the people had just one thing to say: "We are Charlie." And the one who didn't say, "I'm Charlie," he was the enemy. During 2, 3 days, 4 days. And after, people began to say, "No, no, no, I'm not Charlie. I'm Charlie if Charlie is defend the freedom of speech." But I had not the same opinion they have. And after this, they began to tell the difference they had with Charlie. But during these 3 days, it was really impossible to make jokes about it, and he knows this. Dieudonné knows this limit, and he wants to go always further. But he has a problem. I think he's really racist because he forgets to be funny. He's very, very funny. When you say other gags, he's technically very, very good. But when he speaks about Jews, he forgets to be funny, and he goes always further. And he seems to be surprised, but he's not. He knows exactly what is allowed and what is not allowed. And normally, it's the first thing we have to learn. What are the limits? And for example, it's something I learned. It's very easy for me. I make sometimes jokes on the limits. And when I receive 5 mails, I know, okay, maybe 100 people were irritated by my jokes. But it's okay. It means that the other people can support it. If I receive 30 mails, I have gone too far. And it happened one day for me. I received 200 mails. It was a bad joke. And people, there were 2 pages with the mails of the readers, and the people knew I had gone too far, and my chief redactor told me, "Okay, now you have to show me your sketches before you do it." So I have lost an area, and I had done a bad thing. And it's exactly what happened with the Danish cartoons. I was against cartoons, but because it was bad humor, it was so frontal. 12 cartoonists told themselves, "Okay, we'll really make something bad against Islam." And they attacked on such a frontal way that the only reaction was to tell, "No, but you see, you try to offend me." And I can understand some reaction. Of course, I can't apologize, I can excuse them. But there is a relation between these cartoons and the reaction they provoke. But with these cartoons, I lost, I think, 5 years of freedom. Because after it was really more difficult to make laughters on Islam, if I want to make laughter on Islam. And I had to catch this freedom, but it lasted maybe 4 or 5 years to have this freedom again. And yeah, I could say it's exactly what will happen with the new cartoons of Charlie Hebdo. I think, it has not changed everything, but it has changed something in France. Because France was the only area where they still did this dumb and bad humor. And the new undertitle of Charlie Hebdo was an unresponsible newspaper. And now I think we have to be responsible newspaper, we have to be responsible cartoonists. And you know, in Charlie Hebdo, they were all young people 40 years ago who discovered this freedom of speech. And they used this freedom of speech as children. There was 20 years ago. But they continued to make the same humor during 50 years. They were 70 years old, but they had still the same humor, and they told, no, there is no censorship, we can do all what we want. No, no, no. It is something very funny, because they say there is nothing sacred, but if you say no censorship, forbidden to make censorship, it means that humor is sacred. And I say, no, 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 humor is not sacred. We have to obey to some rules. And it's, I think, what France will learn from these attacks. I could show you now my drawings to illustrate what I had told now. So, about Islam. Malala, 70 years old, Nobel Prize of Freedom. It's okay. She doesn't need to go to school now. You see, I don't want to convince Islamist people that women can go to school, so I made provocative humor. And it's interesting. It was 8 months ago. The Islamists have beheaded an Englishman. And there was a big reaction in England, in France too, and people had the t-shirt with "not in my name." I'm a Muslim, but I'm not a Muslim, but I'm not an Islamist. And it was interesting for me, because I know that for a Muslim, it's forbidden to design Muhammad. But I think for me, it's possible. And I would like to create this new area of freedom of speech. And for example, how do I do? You know, in this, you see in this design, in this image, in this cartoon, Muhammad has a good rule. He is with us. He's member of. He's one of our. He has the same T-shirt as we have. Not in my name. So there is a double message. Okay, I provoke yourself. I make what you forbid to us. But I am with you because I mean the same as you think. So I am with the Muslim people, and I think it's ambiguous, and this ambiguity allows to the people who have not the same opinion as I have to laugh with me, I think. And if they don't laugh, maybe they can tolerate that I make this drawing. It's 3 weeks before the attack of Charlie Hebdo. You had vehicles who hurted people in France. Two cars. Did she cry Allah Akbar before she heard the thing? So another definition of humor is horror that you overcome. And I like this definition of humor. You overcome your horror. It's really a good function too of humor. And here, I would like to show you something. I had to make a message of good year, a wish. And my newspaper asked me to do this. So I laughed on my newspaper. Oh, finally, a newspaper with good news. And they just, I wish you a good news. And another newspaper in France, the concurrent of Charlie Hebdo, asked me to do wishes too. And I gave same sketches as I do with Tribune de Genève. They told me, no, it's not bad enough. And I finished doing this one.
Oh.
And they were happy. But you see, I can do this kind of humor because it's for Charlie, not Charlie, for Ciné Mensuel. And I know people who will buy this newspaper are people who have my sensibility, my affinity. So I can make this inclusive humor. They know that we have the same opinion. I never could do the same thing in a newspaper like Tribune de Genève because I know that it can shock people who don't have the same opinion as I have. So you see the difference just between two newspapers. So you have always to know for whom you are doing these drawings. So, for example, this is very interesting. You know, by the 9/11, it's the first time in my life I couldn't make a drawing, a cartoon. Because I thought in this time that the job of the cartoonist is to make people laugh. And this day, 9/11, I couldn't make laugh and I couldn't laugh. So I decided to do nothing. And the day after, I saw drawings of my colleagues, and they all did something which was not funny, but which just accompanied the mourning process of people. So, and I understand that we are just we are friends of people. When people are sad, we have to be sad with them. And after the 9/11, you saw for a festival, for example, of Statue of the Liberty, who cries, who weeps. It was not very interesting, not very funny, but we were all in the same process, in the mourning process. And I think it's an interesting function of humor. Not of humor, but of the humorist, of the cartoonist, I would say. When you can't, in the moment you can't make laugh, okay, you accompany. And after, but not the same day, after you can make jokes and we'll see what happens. So, for me, it was difficult to make jokes, and I just wanted to significate I was like everybody. I was in the emotions. I show my emotion, and I just show, okay, we are all in the same emotion, I'm with you, and I create a new community, who all those who are together in this cruel moment. But the day after, I am a little bit less sad. And you can't always be sad. You have to do something with your sadness. And it's very interesting for the humorist, because what is the best way to do something when you are sad is to transform, for example, it's a usual process to transform your sadness in something as vengeance, as colère, on dit déjà, irritation, jealousy, yeah. They had killed the best one. You see, they had the sense of humor. So I'm making laugh on them. I make something with my sorrow. And it's this mourning process. And I think the humorist can be the one who accelerates this mourning process. And it's a social role which is also very interesting. After, for example, I speak not on the attack, but about the attacks. You see, France, nouvelle mesure antiterroriste, pas sorti Charlie Hebdo. I see the risks for Muslim people. I have empathy for the Muslims who are not Islamists. I have to show in this moment that Muslims are not Islamic, that there is a difference. And maybe you know the famous cartoon of Charlie Hebdo, who provoked maybe the attacks. You had Muhammad, who was watching Muslims and who told it's really tough to be loved by
Idiots.
idiots. Yeah.
Tripolis.
Yeah. By germs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was interesting for me because, you know, I had a certain empathy with the cartoonists. I knew some of the cartoonists, and I used, maybe for the last time in my life, I do use the reputation of these people to laugh on my readers. I say my readers, the readers of the Tribune de Genève, they are jerks. And I just received one mail of somebody who told me that you are saying we are jerks. And the other, it was true. But the other, you know, it was very interesting. I knew it's the only moment I could tell to my readers, you are jerks. And I never can anymore, I think. I used really this little moment. And after they sold 7 million Charlie Hebdo, and the new chief redactor said, okay, now please cool, there are people who are reading. And I wanted to mean, okay, that cartoons can't be innocent as they were before. And I think it's the lesson of and it's a trick of cartoonists. You blend the most important thing of the week with the most important thing of the day. It's a melting thing. It's really a trick of cartoonists. It's just a technique of it. Here is something else. Okay, I will finish with the other. Yeah, I could. At midterms, the end is difficult for Obama. It's a drawing I like to do, but it was an error. Now he is more active than he was before, so it was all just to show you that I can. Yeah, it was an error. Yeah.
En plus, il est gaucher.
Exactly. You are, and it's impossible. At the moment, it's totally impossible. And a reader sent me a mail to tell it to me. Yeah. So it was what I. Okay, I have finished.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there's going to be probably a couple of questions, right? Who has, next?
Hi. Apart for the time you had the discussion when you were chief editor, are there times when the day after the date was published, you watched your cartoon and said, no, I shouldn't have done this one. It was a bad one, or it was too mean or?
So I wanted to say something, but it was a bad drawing because I didn't tell what I wanted to tell, and it was not received as I wanted to be received. So I told me, okay, it was equivoque, so I did the wrong one. I wanted to laugh on, it was when Muhammad Ali was with the flame, Olympic flame, and he has Parkinson. And I was shocked because I told me, okay, they are showing the strongness and weakness of this man, and I felt bad because I told me they are showing this. It's really it's a show. It's something. It's a fake, and I wanted to make a joke about it, and I just showed the man with a trembling, and it seemed as I was laughing on his weakness, and so it was bad. It was mean, and really people were very angry, and many people wrote, if you continue to make such design, I won't buy. I want no more, no longer an abonnement. And the chief redactor understands very well when.
Yeah, just go for it.
Okay. Yeah.
Otherwise, you need to put it really close to your.
Okay. Anyway, it's okay. Has there been any work that you have regretted making, or could you also tell us one particular work that you really felt that this is your best work, the best and the worst? Or any regrets?
So the worst is the one I spoke about.
Yeah.
The best ones are, you know, the big events make the good drawings. And for example, when Switzerland said no to Europe, I made a good drawing who made laugh all the people who had said yes to. And I received maybe 100 mails of people who told me, thank you. And it's exactly what I told you before. We had lost, we were defeated, but I showed the Swiss German a little bit as an undeveloped man. And all the French people of Switzerland could say, okay, we have won in our dreams. And really, I never had such reactions before a drawing. And for example, the drawing of the pencil, it's not a very good drawing, I think. It's easy to do. In the moment I found the idea, I knew that many people would find this idea. And when I was finishing my drawing, and I watched internet, and I saw the same idea I was making already done in the internet. But it was important to accompany to accompany people, and I received also many mails from people who told me thank you for this drawing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As a cartoonist, I mean, you've opened my eyes, so thank you. I love the wit and the provocation and this line that you talk about, what is the limit? And just mentioning, let's say 9/11 or the Charlie Hebdo events, how do you, as a cartoonist, know that this is my original work? Or, as you said, when you went with the pencil, you see that other cartoonists are producing the image. Is there a battle among cartoonists, or you all
No,
sort of
yes.
solidarity together to say, well, you
No, no.
got to the press before I
No,
did, or
there is a battle. Of course. As an artist, I try to do what other people don't do. And I am never so happy when I find an idea that the other people don't find. It's my role. For example, I don't try very often to be provocative. What I try to be is to be a journalist, but you know, a journalist is somebody who is always seeing the things in a medium shot. And I do exactly the contrary as a cartoonist. I try to go above and to see the thing from above as a philosopher. Sometimes I go very, very near and I see the big nose of people and I show the big nose. I go nearer and it's interesting to see the things from near. And sometimes I go beside and I try to see the thing as the journalists don't see it. And for me, it's my role, I think. And I try naturally to do what the other people don't do. And for maybe I eliminate always the ideas when I tell to me, okay, another people can do it, another cartoonist can do it. With the famous drawing of the pencil, I told me, I didn't sign it, because I told me, okay, everybody can have this idea, and you would have had this idea if you would have thought about it, I'm sure. And something, you know, there are two kinds of drawings. When people say, it's exactly that, it's very often the first idea I have. And it's an intelligence with the people. And it's the idea I'm sure you would have had if you would have thought about it. It's exactly that. And you feel in the same community if you do. It's the most, maybe, easy idea I can have. But I'm a Protestant, I love when I transpirate and all the things, and I love my last idea. When I find it by another special trail, a special way, and I am the only one who can reach this way. And I like to find this idea. It's my favorite idea. It's a little bit more difficult to find these ideas. And we have a problem, you know, with, you know, for example, I very, very rarely use drawing without text, because I have disconfiance in the image. It's my Protestant way. I don't like so much emotion. I like to speak to the intelligence of people. And a problem when you do drawing without text, if you have to speak immediately to people. So, how can I speak about Italy without text? I have maybe 5 images that I have in common with you. Spaghettis, Pisa Tower, yeah. So, and if I don't use text, I use one of these 4 images, and I'm sure I do the same cartoon as another cartoonist. For example, 2 years ago, we made jokes about the Gripen, the new jet of the army that we will never have. And I didn't use a text. We were 4 in the French, Swiss, who did exactly the same drawing. And it's a problem. And I try not to use drawings without text, because I know that other cartoonists will find this the same idea.
I think that right now it's like almost 10 o'clock, so I think we're going to keep the questions maybe for after, for around the coffee, if you are okay with it. Yeah, so thank you.